This is the Deseret News, Sunday edition, when your family needs to know more.
And good morning. Welcome to the Deseret News Sunday edition. I'm Dave McCann. The way news is produced and delivered is rapidly changing. As you've seen on this show, the Deseret News is taking a new approach with the National Edition. A print subscription mailed directly to homes is now available in Utah and several other states around the country. Keith McCord reports on why the paper felt readers weren't getting the news that they wanted.
The National Edition offers a different perspective.
What we've done is we've identified these different areas that really resonate with our readers.
Both the daily Deseret News and its weekly national version provide readers with news and information, just in different ways. The Deseret News conducted a survey of its readers and asked what issues are most important in their lives and what they wanted to read more about. Based on those answers, the National Edition began focusing on 6 areas: family, faith, education, culture, care for the poor, and financial responsibility.
The research showed that there was a huge unmet need for people looking for something thoughtful and rigorous, but also something that reflected the values and questions they had and that resonated with their families.
Veteran Utah journalist Matt Brown has written stories for daily newspaper readers for years. For the National Edition now, he takes a different approach. For example, at Sundance this year, he didn't focus on the daily buzz and celebrity sightings that appear in the local paper.
I looked at as many of the films as I could in the program and identified which films were relevant to our areas of family editorial emphasis.
One article he wrote was about the documentary on Mitt Romney, which definitely fit into the category of family. To date, the Deseret News National Edition has 300,000 readers, and the feedback has been positive.
What's most gratifying to me are when we see personal accounts from people around the country saying, thank you for sharing this kind of interesting information.
Until now, the National Edition has been sent to readers outside of the state, but readers here can now subscribe, and this spring it will be available online. It's also being syndicated with more than 400 news publications, including the content in their editions. We've certainly come a long way since the old antique press days. People can find their news anytime, 24/7, in a variety of ways.
But with this smorgasbord of choices that we have out there on the internet, media companies need to focus on what they're best at and identify their audience.
So we're pleased with the initial results, but we also feel like we're just at the start of this.
Joining me now to talk more about this, Clark Gilbert and Paul Edwards. Let's talk about how you went about finding those 6 areas. You surveyed readers both here and across the country, right?
Yeah, we did that both in this market and nationally. And we found a real recurring theme that people were frustrated with traditional media. In fact, they felt a faith gap and a values gap with the typical American household. In fact, our own research has shown that if you look at a typical American newsroom, the typical journalist in an American newsroom is 1/3 less likely to go to church than the average American. They're 3 times more likely to be atheists than the average American. And the question is, how is that affecting news coverage? And what the survey showed is people wanted something that was thoughtful and rigorous, but also reflected their values. And we looked at that and said, how do we produce something that has national insights, deep and rigorous journalistic reporting, but also covers the topics that really matter to people. And in that research, we identified 6 areas of editorial emphasis.
And that starts with faith, family.
Yes, family, faith, care for the poor. People are very concerned about the education of their children. They're concerned about media consumption and what the values are in the media. They're concerned about financial responsibility, especially in these hard times. And so these were the different areas where people were saying, we want better information, but they weren't finding a trusted media source that was giving them the kind of depth and rigor that they found with other kinds of reporting in the world.
And so there's that aha moment. Ooh, here's a niche, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
And yet a niche almost understates it. This is over half of America. And our focus group showed that they were reading the New York Times, listening to Sean Hannity, and really dissatisfied with both, but mashing them together to somehow get what they were trying to do. They admired the rigor in the New York Times, but they just didn't hear any of their values. And they heard some of their values in talk radio, but it felt polemic and angry. And so the challenge for Paul's team is to create coverage around these areas of emphasis that is simultaneously rigorous and thoughtful, but reflects the values of most families in America.
This is a weekly publication. Once a week, the same 6 issues are the focus of the paper.
In this national edition, we pulled together the best coverage of these areas of emphasis. So, for example, we might have a story that looks deeply at the personal, but also the social costs associated with pornography. We had a great piece on how family values and religious values are transmitted. This was based on decades of research, how they're transmitted intergenerationally. What seems to work in family relationships that allows that to happen. All based on research and then looking at, like we've said, issues that matter to families.
This is different in that it's not the local newspaper covering your local events all the time. These are issues that affect the whole country, that affect us all.
That's right. This isn't specific to any one denomination. This is really, the reason it's called the National Edition is that these are nationally based stories around these concerns.
What's exciting now and what's really new now for Utahns is that we're bringing that national edition here to Utah. And it doesn't matter if you're already a subscriber to the Deseret News, if you subscribe to another paper, if you don't subscribe to a paper at all, this once a week deep look at issues that really resonate with families is something everyone now in the state of Utah can get access to. And here in the state of Utah, you get the national edition as well as the LDS Church News combined in those publications. We offer it for only $30 a year.
The national edition in the print form has been out there for a couple of years now. Yes. How is it playing?
Yeah, it's been a great source of growth for the Deseret News. In fact, today we have nearly 300,000 readers reading this every week. In 2012, the growth of the national edition made the Deseret News one of the fastest growing print newspapers in the United States.
Was this a risky venture when you were first talking about doing something like this? I wonder what the thinking was there.
It was originally, really a bold presumption that we could reach out beyond Salt Lake City and reach readers all over the country. We also have generated a lot of engagement and interest in other publications. Over the last several years, the Deseret News has really been innovator in this industry. Our online growth has been phenomenal. Our strength in the market's been very strong, and we've hosted publications here in Salt Lake from all over the country. The Dallas Morning News, the Boston Globe, the Chicago Tribune, the San Francisco Chronicle, on and on and on have come out here to study some of the innovative work we've been doing. But as we looked at this research, we realized this wasn't just for Utah, and it wasn't just for one denomination, but these were issues that really resonated with the heartland of America, with American families around the dinner table. And the idea that this was risky in a media environment where a lot of media companies are struggling sounds challenging. But looking at how compelling the research was, there's just a huge gap in this. This is what people were telling us over and over they were looking for in their news.
What's so gratifying, Keith, is when we get a letter like we did from a woman in Clovis, California, who said, "Thank you for providing us with information that our family uses weekly." Her neighbor was getting it and started sharing it with her. And we just started to recognize that pulling together these stories, which appear in the daily pages of the Deseret News, but putting them in one place, one resource that pulls this together, was something that our local readers would benefit from.
Clark Gilbert, Paul Edwards, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, back to you.
Thank you, Keith. If you subscribe to the National Edition, it will be mailed directly to your home along with the LDS Church News. The Deseret News is also launching a National Edition website this spring. You can preview it by going to national.deseretnews.com. It's a challenge to keep kids healthy and safe in this digital age. Straight ahead, we'll talk to a mediatrician about the best way to manage media in the home.